unfortunately, I wish there was a magic bullet, and I'm hoping that the legislators do wake up to this. Thank you. Ms. Hammond.
Thank you, Mr. Gann. I wanted to, since in the vein of a workshop, I think there might be some people here because they've asked me, and I've asked Mr. Richardson, he's explained it to me about fund balance. You know, their questions, and we know, Mr. Gann, we've been on the board long enough sometimes where we've had questions. It used to be 8% of the worth of the district, and I think now, did you tell me it's 18%?
Our policy says anywhere from 15 to 18%.
15 to 18. So I think that we in the workshop should think about, I mean, I'm not saying that it is the right or wrong thing to do it. We should question what it is and what impact it would have if we looked at using like $1 million of that, you know, because it's there like in a savings. So I don't know if any other board members, that was kind of what I wanted to have the conversation with you guys, whether that's something you consider or.
Well, I think when I look back at the charts that Mr. White did, and I think he did a lot of research on them, the concern I have is if we start early on with a compromise to spend part of a fund balance, which is a floating, Mr. Richardson, in a minute, I want you to explain to us fund balance.
That's what I wanted to do.
I think if we start that as a compromise, we'll be in quicker, worse shape a lot quicker than we're going to be, whether we touch it or not. But I do know it's not an account you've got down at Wachovia Bank that says X amount of dollars in it. But would you mind explaining fund balance and that float that's in there and how it does fluctuate?
Be glad to. Can I answer Ms. Lovelace's question she asked earlier, though, because I figured out what you were asking me. The increase in the budget was $3 million from what I showed, but what I think what you were referring to was if we did not have a millage increase, we would be short $3.7 million of funding our budget. So just wanted to clarify that while I had a chance. I guess one of the misconceptions about what is a fund balance is, and I've been hearing it for years, is that it's an account we've got sitting with $32 million sitting in it. In reality, it's like your personal checkbook. You know, you have a certain balance in there. This is a snapshot as of a certain date. The $32 million is a snapshot of where we are on June 30th at the end of the fiscal year 2014 in this case. But that amount fluctuates on a daily basis depending on whether or not we're writing checks for payroll or AP or what have you, or whether or not we're getting money in from taxes or from the state or what have you. So that it fluctuates. What it does is allows us to get through those times when we don't have tax money coming in, like, you know, in the months of October, November, when we hit our low point in cash. So we don't have to borrow money in order to meet our expenses. So it's not just an account sitting there. I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's just like your personal checking account.
Ms. Hammond.
I wanted to ask, after he explained that, and that's good. I think that's a good way. You helped me today about understanding it. But why does it vary so about what districts think is the best amount to let float in there? You know, in other words, it's got to build up from somewhere. I have that question from constituents. You know, if we've been short some years, how do we still have some type of extra that we can build that? And I understand the good of having it built up. I'm not against that, and I'm not saying we shouldn't have a good, strong fund balance because I know it helps our rating. I've been on the board, and I've heard that. But I think, you know, I did a little research. Different districts that are, you know, good districts. They vary in what they have, and then some of the poorer districts have very little, which is bad when times get bad. But how do we? I think the law said, because I asked you to look that up for me. It just says reasonable, you know, fund balance. So it can vary from district to district, correct? But I guess I'm asking you, how do we come, if it floats around, because see, to me, for a constituent, just the average constituent that didn't come in and hear in your presentation, it's easy for them not to understand. So we have this sort of fund, in other words, we have this savings account was how the first, I think, back in Dan's day, he explained to me. And you need it because you might be short till the tax money comes in, so this is this money we can pull from till we get what we need. But taxpayers do still see it as extra money we've had. So I guess I want to be able to tell my constituents how it builds up, how we've used it in the past, because I know we set aside like $3 million, I think, in 2008 for when the new school would come on. And I know we don't want it for reoccurring. You know, it shouldn't be operational. I understand that. But I still, if we're looking at trying to bridge this, no, we can but fund this this complete budget for this year, and then this hopes that maybe this survey they're doing and these legislators are going to finally come up and reform and do away with this Act 388. You know, would 1 year of using not a lot of it, say $2 million out of the fund balance, something to consider. I really want to understand that in this workshop.
Well, I don't think that we've intentionally grown our fund balance on a year-to-year basis. What happens is your budget it's a projection. You project in your revenues, you project in your expenditures, and typically what you see is if you've got money coming in over projections or you're spending less than you projected, that's how your fund balance grows on an annual basis. We don't budget for it necessarily, but that's what's happened over probably the last 6 or 8 years in this district. Now, there have been several years where this district has had to dig deep into the fund balance but it's also helped them survive the Great Recession too. I think we still probably lost somewhere in the neighborhood, if I remember correctly, 70 some odd positions back then, but they weathered it, and we are where we are now. What was the second part of your question? I'm sorry.
One, I was trying to figure, how it varied each year. You answered that a little bit about how it builds up, and then what we have used it for, and what, as our experts, you want to see it used for. The smartest use of it, so that I can explain that to constituents.
Well, part of what our district has done, what this board has done, is set aside part of our fund balance, and don't quote me on these amounts because it's been a while since I looked at it, but I believe that we had somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.5 million set aside for school startup costs. We had some set aside for the construction of the middle school. And there was one other item, I forgot what it was designated for, off the top of my head.
Well, those are good examples. I mean, that was my point.
But those are non-recurring items that are in there to be used for those kind of things. And quite frankly, this year with the beginning of the new middle school and the intermediate school, we will be tapping into some of that. Now, whether or not our fund balance will shrink, it just depends on how we end up the year. But we will be using some of that for the new school to start up.
And I guess my last thing is, if we've had years, and it was one of my questions to you, but and I think you had it in an attachment, and I'm really sorry I did not get back from my mom's funeral and things till last night, so I didn't get to get these attachments. But that was my question is, and I'm sorry I didn't get to study all this all week, because you certainly sent it to me in a timely manner. But I wanted to see, say on a 10-year history, how much we had and what are the different things we had used it for. So, but that's okay. You don't have to. I'll go home and look at my attachment. But that was I just want the public to know that is, and my fellow board members, that was just something I was looking at. I certainly don't think it's smart to tap into fund balance just to operate a budget. But I do believe that sometimes there are times it's appropriate, and I think we've done it before. And I know, Mr. Gant, you're going to help me. We're going to be a positive thinker that they are going to change that Act 388. Mr. White, you were out of here, but I found out today that some of our legislators they sent out 18,000 questionnaires to 18,000 businesses in Lexington County about this, so that they can have some ammunition to realize this 388 is not working. And then if they put the pressure to change it, maybe we can get back to a more equitable funding. So, but anyway, I think I wanted fund balance to be something that fellow board members heard about, helped understand, and it's just something I'm just asking you to think about with me. That's all I was saying.
Last at graduation, between one of the graduations, Ed sort of made his presentation that we saw earlier to Nathan Valentine. And he, being in the legislature, gave us no hope that anything was going to be better. He pretty much said, yes, this is what you're facing from now on. There's going to be budget shortfalls. Ed, did you not get that same impression that there was not, maybe some tweaking is the only thing he said, but a mass reformation of 388 is not coming. I don't know who's saying that. I'd love to hear them, and I would love to hear them as the primary voice, but I'm not hearing that. And the legislatures I've talked to are not saying that. So I don't think saying, well, next year it will be better is not reality, because even, like I said, our own legislatures are saying, you look at this is what, they didn't disagree with Ed's analysis that you're going to have the budget shortfalls every year, and that 388's not going away or being significantly changed.
Well, one of the things that if I can, Mr. Kent, one of the things that he did say was that they were talking about this red block up here, the revenue shift. They were talking about doing that again next year, and so more. And so, but I think Nathan got it. I think he understood it, and what I thought was encouraging before we left that day. He said, let me know when y'all have got this message honed and down, and we can talk. And so I just had a conversation with some of the people that were here, the business people. But it's going to take a lot of people talking. It's not just something we're going to want to ask our legislators to do and it get done. It's going to take this community really, they got to understand it first, and then they got to help communicate to the General Assembly. And then I think the other hope is, and it doesn't mean Act 388 would go away, but maybe they make some adjustments. But I think, Lynn, you suggested there's probably 10 or 12 districts that are probably very similar to ours that have a very, and I just had this conversation with somebody out in the hallway, is we have a very small business base, and so they're bearing a disproportionate load. And, there's 10 or 12 districts like that too that are also growing. And then we have the other disadvantage of we have a nice socioeconomic profile, which means we're one of the ones they're pulling money from. And so I think if we start, we have to help lead the conversation, but it's going to take more than us talking before anything gets done. And it may be the other districts like us join in that conversation, but there's nothing else we can do. And I know I missed part of your conversation, but right now, fund balance is our lifeline. If we hit a wall, and there's no reason to release any of it unless there are stable revenue streams that can cover recurring expenses. But as soon as we start covering recurring expenses with that fund balance, we've made ourselves unsustainable when we don't have any other option. And we are going to quickly get to the point where we don't have other options.
Any other comments? Mr. Richards, one of the things that came, okay.
Comment. I think yeah, Mr. White, we mentioned that to you, what you just said, is that there's power in numbers. And if there are 8 or 10 other school districts that are in the same boat or situation that we're in, a conversation with them, in addition to the community getting behind this, because again, the only way to implement change sometimes is that you have to put pressure on where the changes come from. And if it's at the intersection, as I said, of Main and Gervais, then that's where we have to begin. The other thing I want to ask Mr. Gann is that what is the, as the chairperson of the School Board Association, how would that help to impact our situation at all? Are they agreeable with where we are?
Well, they're aware, and you got to understand it's all 81 school districts.
Right,
and
sure.
I think there's 8 or 10 very similar to School District 5, and they've done studies with that too. And there's impacts and different types of impacts. So, but it's certainly a place. I've talked to Scott Price about it. Scott Price is now the executive director-elect, will be July 1, Prior to that, he was a legislative liaison along with legal counsel. But there are ways to craft that and get that message and maybe hold people harmless or get things where, I'm encouraged some tweaking to that could be the answer. I don't see 388 ever going away, but it can certainly be changed. But I've talked with Scott Price about it too. I don't know that there's a magic answer, but that's something we can incur those numbers. We're talking about a lot of people statewide there too. What we don't want to do in a large organization is having school districts, one group of districts pitted against another school districts, another group, because we're all basically about the same purpose, helping children and educating children. So I would hate to see that type split come about, and that'd be something we'd have to, but I will certainly continue to talk to him about that. That's a great idea. And I agree with you, there's a lot of strength in numbers, a lot of strength in that. 15,000 surveys, if they get those back in numbers.
Yeah.
But before we go back there, I wanted to ask Mr. Richardson, I thought of a real good example of fund balance use just about 2 years ago, and I think it was before you got here. Dr. Hefner will remember it vividly, but we had an issue with mold in a number of our schools. We didn't budget for anything to take care of that or address it in any way, and I believe the way we covered that was with fund balance. We did address the issue because it was a health issue to our faculty and our students. So that's the biggest difference to me, that you have a one-time type expenditure you didn't plan on, but if we started using fund balance, I think the downside for recurring items, it wouldn't take very long at all, and I think that compounding effect that Mr. White shows in his slides would soon eat away into that. So that's probably the best example I can think of lately. Ms. Hammond.
Mr. Gant, I want to ask Dr. Hefner, the speaker, and I don't remember the name, but spoke about the science or the AP, if it was AP, I know it was science, not offered at Irmo High. Now, that has nothing to do with this budget discussion, does it? That's just something.
I'm not aware of that situation. That was the first I've heard of that
so
this
it's
evening.
not.
So, right.
Right. I know.
But
I saw
I'm not
the lady.
aware. I'll have to check into that.
But I
don't
would
know.
like.
I can tell you in general, schools are assigned FTEs based on their enrollment.
Right,
High
and what's
schools
assigned.
get one teacher for every 18.5 or 19.5, I forget. 18.5 students, they get an FTE. And then we operate under your policy, which says that we're not to offer classes that have fewer than 12 students in them. So I don't know what the situation is there. I'll have to look into it. I don't know.
I just didn't know if it was something we had cut out. I just wanted to find it. And then I want to just finish up and tell Mr. Gant, you and Mr. White, you're right. I really wasn't. I think with this 18,000 surveys, and I thought there's several. I think Chip and Rick Quinn are on this bill, but it's to reform. It is to give us some type of. They're starting the conversation in a bill to reform it. It may not ever get taken away, but I do think that there's hope that it's killing businesses and it's pitting one group of your society against the other, and we both need each other. And so I have hope it's going to happen. So.
Any other comments, questions regarding the budget? All right, well, I would encourage everyone to continue to send your questions in if you have questions. We'll be voting on the budget on the 22nd. And I'm reminded we had a speaker tonight that hit on a real key word, and he uses the word trust. And I appreciated him using it because I think everybody in this room is all about doing what is the right thing for these schools and these students, and we've got to trust that we're going to do the right thing by them. And I appreciated him mentioning that tonight. But with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Do I have a motion? Mr. White.
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Ms. Bumgardner seconds. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. And I'll remind the audience we'll be right back here on the 22nd, same place. So you're welcome to come back. Thank you.
I think Lynn said there's